Lena had spent years denying herself everything just to care for her disabled husband. But one day, Maxim left his phone on the kitchen counter, and when Lena accidentally triggered a voice message meant for her mother-in-law, she turned pale at what she heard. Before we go any further, tell us from which country you're watching this video, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because I share true and powerful life stories with you every day. Enjoy the listening. Lena could barely stand as she stepped out of the cosmetics company building. The workday had exhausted her to the core. More product checks, new formulas, endless discussions with suppliers. The full weight of responsibility rested on her shoulders and had for a long time. She walked slowly toward the bus stop, automatically counting the days left until her next paycheck. The same thoughts spun through her head: the mortgage, the bills, groceries, her daughter, maximum. Lena sighed, worn out. Her husband, once a strong and cheerful man, was now just a shadow of his former self. After losing his job due to illness, the burden of the entire family fell squarely on her. At first, she believed it was temporary, that he would recover, that he'd find something, anything, to keep himself busy. But year after year, nothing changed. She finally reached her apartment, climbed the stairs slowly, and unlocked the door. The apartment was quiet. Maxim, as always, was lying on the couch in the living room, eyes fixed on the TV. "Hi," she said, taking off her coat. "Yeah," he mumbled, without even looking at her. A typical evening, always the same, Lena thought. She put the kettle on and drifted into thought. Maxim had once been so different. Hardworking, cheerful, full of energy. He'd started working early in life, not wanting to waste time on long studies. Straight after school, he trained as a driver and got a job at the city bus depot. At first, he drove local routes, but later earned the license needed for intercity trips. He loved the work, the roads, the changing landscapes, the new towns. But his body couldn't take it. Years of sitting, constant vibration, poor diet, and chronic sleep deprivation led to the first worrying symptoms. At 38, he was hospitalized with severe back pain. Then came a heart scare. Doctors strongly advised a career change, but Maxim resisted until his body gave out completely. After several hospital stays, he could no longer move without pain. It was then that his mother, Natalia Ivanovna, who held a senior position at the Social Welfare Fund, arranged for him to be officially recognized as disabled. Lena accepted it as inevitable. She genuinely believed he was unable to work, since Maxim constantly complained that he couldn't sit, stand, or even walk without discomfort. From that point on, she took on all the responsibilities. Natalia Ivanovna was a woman of strong character. Her life had been devoted to her son, and now she expected Lena to continue that mission. "You're not taking good care of Max," she'd say, at almost every opportunity. "He needs support, attention." Lena never argued, though her insides burned. Support. She worked every day, paid the bills, provided food, medicine, covered the mortgage, while Maxim did nothing but complain about life. But to her mother-in-law, that didn't count. "You know how hard this is for him emotionally," she'd remind her. "At least cook something nice for him more often instead of your quick dinners." Lena clenched her teeth, as if she had time for gourmet cooking. After her mother-in-law secured Maxim's disability status, he gave up completely. He didn't look for work, showed no interest in anything, just moaned about his fate. And Natalia kept repeating the same line: "He's disabled. You have to support him. You're his wife." But Lena had begun to notice that Maxim never even tried to rebuild his strength. He didn't do any rehab exercises, didn't look into remote work. All he ever did was take one solitary walk a day, as prescribed by the doctor for an hour or two. Then it was back to the couch and the television. Lena had grown used to survival mode. Day after day, she got up early, went to work, and returned to endless chores in the evening. Some years ago, her boss at the factory, Viktor Petrovich, brought up the company's annual vacation packages to health resorts, awarded to top-performing employees. "Lena, you need a break. Your results are always excellent. Take this opportunity for yourself," he said, handing her the brochure of available resorts. She glanced at it briefly and handed it back. Vacation was something distant and unreal to her. She couldn't afford to relax, not with Maxim waiting at home, helpless without her. But then another idea came to her. "Could I have the voucher made out to my husband?" she asked. Victor raised his eyebrows in surprise but nodded. Lena explained that Maxim had serious health problems and that a stay at the resort might help with his recovery. And so, a new tradition was born. Almost every year, she arranged for Maxim to go to a sanatorium, while she stayed behind to keep working as usual. Deep down, she hoped it would help him, that maybe, after a few of these trips, he would feel better, maybe even find a small side job. But every time he came back, it was the same story. Maxim would grumble that the sanatorium was a waste of time, that nothing helped, and that the doctors were clueless. He'd flop back on the couch, moan about life, and return to depending entirely on her. Still, Lena kept hoping. One workday, Viktor Petrovich called her into his office. He was in high spirits and immediately shared some big news. There was an opening for a 6-month work assignment in Paris. She would work at one of the leading cosmetics factories, with fully paid accommodation and an excellent salary. Even better, she could bring her daughter, Dasha, who would be enrolled in the school at the embassy. Lena listened in silence. But instead of joy, anxiety began to rise in her chest. This was a dream opportunity, what any professional in her field would die for. Paris meant growth, a new life, new possibilities. But Maxim's image immediately flooded her mind. He couldn't manage without her. He doesn't work. He can't even buy groceries for himself. Who would care for him? Who would keep track of his medications? The answer was clear. Lena firmly said, "No," and immediately felt a weight settle on her heart. She knew she had made the right choice, but why did it bring no relief? She left the office and lingered by the window, looking out at the gray, cloud-covered city. Somewhere out there was another world, another life. But it wasn't for her. She had responsibilities, a family, a duty. She couldn't abandon Maxim. She simply had no right. But one day, Lena's life turned upside down. She came home in the middle of the day. As soon as she took off her coat, Maxim peeked out from the living room. "The courier's here, brought those headphones for Dasha. He's waiting downstairs," he said. Lena nodded absent-mindedly, but Maxim was already slipping on his jacket. "I'll go get them," he muttered, as he stepped outside and headed toward the elevator. Lena walked into the kitchen. A mountain of dirty dishes was piled in the sink. Dasha had been in a rush to get to school in the morning, and Maxim had eaten lunch, but of course hadn't cleaned up after himself. She grabbed a sponge and turned on the faucet. The water pressure was too high, and droplets splashed everywhere. A few landed on Maxim's phone, which had been left right next to the sink. The touchscreen reacted to the moisture, and in that moment, the phone buzzed. A voice message from Natalia Ivanovna lit up on the screen. Lena hadn't meant to listen, but when she moved the phone to wipe the counter, her damp fingers accidentally tapped the screen. The message began to play automatically. "Maxim, I don't understand why you're in such a hurry. I really don't like this idea of Svetlana moving in with you. I just don't. It's not good for you. This will end badly. You're entirely dependent on your wife. That's what you need to be thinking about." Lena froze. Svetlana? Who the hell is Svetlana? Her heart started to pound. Her fingers hung above the soapy water, motionless. Slowly, she turned her head back toward the phone. 2 days ago, Maxim had celebrated his birthday. She had gifted him this brand new smartphone, and if she remembered correctly, he hadn't yet set up a password lock. Her hands trembled, but almost without realizing what she was doing, she picked up the phone and opened the messaging app. She scrolled back through the chat history and began listening to earlier voice notes. The first one was from Maxim, recorded that very morning. "Mom, Svetochka is such a wonderful woman. I've fallen for her. I want her to live with me. I've already planned everything. Lena told me she turned down the Paris offer, but I'll do everything I can to change her mind. I'll say it's her big chance. A push for her career. She'll even be thankful. I'll tell her I'm insisting she think about herself for once, instead of always worrying about me." Lena sat on the stool, her fingers growing numb from shock. The next message was from Natalia Ivanovna. "Maxim, you know how much I can't stand your little wifey, but you need to understand, if Lena finds out you brought another woman into your home while she's on a work trip, you're finished." Then came Maxim's reply. "Mom, why do you always have to be so dramatic? How would she even find out? Neither of us talks to the neighbors. We'll live peacefully here in the apartment. And my wife? She'll be sending good money from France." "Well, not our wife, I mean for me and Svetochka. It's just some cosmic irony." He chuckled. Lena covered her mouth to stop herself from crying out. Another voice note followed. Natalia again. "Are you stupid? You can't hide a needle in a sack. When Lena finds out, you'll be penniless. Do you really think they'll extend your disability status next year? I'm not even sure I can pull it off again. And if I can't, you'll have to get a real job. Lena still thinks you're truly disabled. She has no idea that it's only thanks to me that you've been getting by with those medical certificates." Then another message from Maxim. "If she finds out, we'll screw her. I'll sue her for half the apartment, then hit her up for alimony too. I am disabled after all. Let her keep working to support our daughter and me and Svetochka." His voice was calm, confident, as if he were discussing a business plan, not the destruction of his own family. And finally, the last message, the one that had triggered everything. Lena leaned back, feeling like the floor had vanished beneath her. Everything she believed in had crumbled in a matter of minutes. She walked out of the kitchen, not noticing how her hands trembled. Her entire life had turned into a lie. She thought Maxim couldn't work, but he simply didn't want to. She thought he was grateful for her support, but he wanted to get rid of her, to leave her in debt and drain the last of her money. She thought she had a family, but to them, she was just a milk cow. A knot tightened in her chest. In the next moment, she grabbed the phone and bolted from the apartment. As she rushed down the stairs, she pulled up Viktor Petrovich's number and, with shaking fingers, pressed call. "Lena, is everything all right?" His voice was filled with concern. She took a deep breath. "I'm in," she said. "I'm going to Paris." "Glad to hear it," he replied without hesitation. "We'll start the paperwork tomorrow." Lena ended the call, and in that instant, something shifted inside her. She would no longer sacrifice herself. France became her new home. Her job at the cosmetics company was fulfilling and inspiring. One opportunity opened the door to another. Her daughter Dasha quickly adjusted to the school at the embassy. She made friends. She smiled again. She embraced life. And then there was Viktor Petrovich. He had always treated Lena with respect. But now that they were working side by side, she began to see him differently, not just as a boss, but as a man who understood her. Calm, reliable, present. 2 months after their move, he proposed to her. But one chapter still needed closing. Through her lawyer, Lena filed for divorce. As expected, Maxim resisted. He demanded his share of the apartment, claiming he was disabled and couldn't be left without a roof over his head. But his confidence quickly crumbled when Lena's attorney politely informed him that, should the case go to court, the legitimacy of his disability status would have to be reviewed. Maxim pushed back, but Natalia Ivanovna understood the danger first. She knew that if an investigation were launched, the outcome could be disastrous for both of them. "Sign it," she ordered her son through clenched teeth, "unless you want the two of us ending up in prison." And so, he lost his chance to live the easy life at someone else's expense. The court ruled against Maxim. Lena's lawyer provided solid proof that all mortgage payments over the years had been made solely by her. The judge ruled that if Maxim wanted a share of the apartment, he would first have to repay part of the outstanding loan. When the apartment was put up for sale, Maxim still clung to hope, believing he'd walk away with enough to start over. But after all was said and done, nearly his entire share went to repay the bank. Lena returned to France. Maxim was left with nothing. He couldn't understand how it had all unraveled so fast. Not long ago, he'd had a warm home, a wife who cared for him, a secure future. Now, he stood at his mother's door, holding a pitiful suitcase. Natalia Ivanovna opened it, looked him up and down, and silently turned and walked back inside. "Mom, I've got nowhere to go," he mumbled as he stepped in behind her. "Not my problem," she snapped, turning on the TV. "I thought you'd help me." "I already did." Her voice was cold, distant. "And you ruined everything." Maxim slowly sank into a chair, burying his head in his hands. A sharp ringing echoed in his ears. Once, he had been the man of his mother's life, her pride, her hope. She had helped him build a life, make plans, push forward. Now, he was a burden, even to her. There was no job, no money. He found work on a construction site, doing hard physical labor he once looked down on. Now, his health truly began to fail. The back pain became unbearable, but he couldn't stop. If he did, he would starve. Every evening he returned to a cramped room in his mother's apartment. She didn't even leave dinner out for him. They barely spoke. He was no longer her pride. Meanwhile, Lena was finally living a new life. When she returned to Paris, she was still emotionally bruised. But with each passing day, the weight of her past loosened its grip. For the first time in years, she no longer had to care for someone who didn't value it. Victor was by her side, steady, thoughtful, kind. He never pressured her, never rushed her. He was simply there. He invited her on evening walks through the city, showed her quiet streets and cozy cafes that served hot chocolate with vanilla. With him, everything felt easy, new. Once, she didn't believe in miracles, didn't think a new beginning was possible. But now, looking into Victor's eyes, she knew. She had finally made the right choice. And what would you have done in Lena's place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.